With just a few changes to your mindset, some willingness to try, and some high-yield studying techniques, you can completely change your medical school experience. Learning how to study is one of the best things that you can do in medical school, and in this video I'll share 3 areas in which you can change how you study to get better marks and avoid burnout in medical school. The first area is what you do before class, and I'm going to start off controversial and say that you should ignore the majority of your lectures and classes provided by your university. And here's why. In my experience, these lectures and classes in medical school tend to be a very inefficient way to learn. First, often the lecturers are academics and researchers first, which means that they don't necessarily know how to teach. Second, these classes are often much longer than they need to be because universities are sometimes required to provide a certain number of teaching hours, or there just aren't incentives for lecturers to finish early. Then finally, they're often just boring because you're just sitting in a lecture or a class listening to someone talk to you. Instead of going to your lectures and classes, I find that it's much more efficient to learn off resources that are free and widely available on the internet. There are free YouTube channels like Armando Hastugan and Ninja Nerd, which can literally teach you all of the content that you need in pretty much half the time and with a lot more clarity. If you're willing to pay, you can get subscriptions like Osmosis and Amboss, which offer a slightly better organized service. When I usually say this, I always get people who say,
"Oh, but what if I miss something?"
And although that's fair enough, I think that these online resources are really comprehensive, so it's pretty unlikely that you'd miss something. And then even if you did miss something, it's probably something that's so niche and so random that you probably would have missed it anyway because you were falling asleep in the lecture. The second thing that I would do to improve how I was studying before class would be to do big picture pre-studying. I used to always rock up to class several weeks behind and not knowing anything that was going on, and obviously this worked out terribly for me. Instead of going to class like this, I find that it's much better to have a big picture idea of what's going on before you even set foot in the class. Before class, I like to read through the class notes, and if I don't have class notes, I'll just read up on the topic and build a big picture understanding of the 3 to 4 main ideas in the topic and how they relate together. What this means is that when I'm taught things in class, I have a baseline level of knowledge, which means that there are anchor points that I can connect the incoming information to, and everything has a lot more relevance. Pre-study is an absolute game changer, and once you start doing it, I'd actually take back what I said about not going to classes and lectures, because then they become an amazing opportunity for you to clarify and deepen your knowledge on any given topic. The take-home message is that you shouldn't go to classes expecting to learn, instead go to consolidate and review what you already know. The second area that you can improve is what you do after class, and this is just as, if not more important than what you do before class. One of the most important things with how you study after class is with revision. Regardless of how well you think you know something, you will forget it if you don't have a system for remembering it. The key word here is system because it's really important that you have a revision system for every single thing that you learn. A great starting revision schedule is to do pre-study 1 to 2 days before your class, learn in class, and then review the content on the day of your class, 1 to 2 days after your class, at the end of the week, and then at the end of the month. When you are doing your revision, make sure that you do not look at any notes or any information about the topic beforehand. Only use your memory. Each time you're revising the same topic, try to change how you're revising it. So for example, the first time I'm revising something, I might do a brain dump mind map. Then the second time, I might create my own OSCE or practice question. And then the final time, I might do some practice questions. Not looking at any information beforehand and changing up the way that you revise something each time are referred to as full recall and interleaving, and they are incredible for getting information into your long-term memory. This leads me on to the second point about what you should be doing after class, which is that you probably don't need Anki as much as you think. Anki and flashcards are often quite a trap because it creates the illusion that you are studying and learning things when in reality you're learning information purely in isolation and without any context. Aside from that, when you do Anki, you'll find that the number of cards that you have just rises really quickly, and also there'll be some cards that you just can't get right no matter how much you try. When you over rely on Anki for your revision, it creates lower order knowledge structures, which creates much less understanding and worse contextual knowledge. If you have a proper revision schedule, Anki can be reserved for those facts that seem unintuitive or not that important, but you still have to know them. All of the content that you learn should be revised in context with relationships to other information through techniques like brain dumping or mind mapping or creating your own practice questions. If you are going to use flashcards, there are some simple rules that you can apply to make them more effective. Try to make sure that your flashcards are testing you on simple facts, things that are like 1 to 2 words or just one sentence that is one fact that you need to know. Make your flashcards so that they are easy to answer as opposed to extremely difficult. If you get a flashcard right a certain amount of times and you feel like you know it really well, just remove that flashcard from your pile. These strategies after class will save you an enormous amount of time close to your exams and will mean that you understand the content much better. The final area is in mindset, and these are the things that tie everything together. Having finished more than half of my medical degree, I realized that in medical school we get taught the same things over and over and over again. The funny thing about it is that often each time we're taught something, we forget it immediately afterwards, and the next time we're taught it, it's basically new information for us again. This kind of makes sense because in medical school, so much content is covered in such a short period of time that often just to feel like you've covered everything, it's very easy to cover content superficially just to know that you've done it. What happens as a result though is that often at the end of a semester, we get this, oh, moment where we realize that we don't remember anything that we were taught throughout the semester. I've definitely been there before, and if you've been there, you'll know that this often means that you panic and then you try to cram everything that you can before the exam just so you can pass. The consequence of this though is that after the exams are done and you have your holidays and you return to medical school the year after, you often don't remember anything that you were taught in the year prior. The problem with this is that it wastes so much time over the course of your degree, because when you're taught the same thing 3 or 4 times, you often end up investing the same amount of energy to understand it each time just to forget it again. What I've learned is that in medical school, it's much better to get into the habit of learning things and reviewing them the first time you're taught them so that you don't forget it. If you get into the habit of doing this at any point in medical school, it will benefit you enormously, not just for medical school, but for your future specialty training, because people are constantly being retaught things that they have already been taught before. The second mindset is related, and it's to do with imposter syndrome. There are people in medical school who seem to have memorized entire textbooks worth of knowledge, and it's easy to compare yourself to them and feel really inferior. These feelings are completely valid, but I want to reassure you that if you got into medical school, you are more than good enough for the career. People are always going to share the best versions of themselves, and the person that seems to have memorized the entire textbook is very unlikely to talk about all the social events or extracurriculars that they had to give up in order to study so much. When you feel FOMO and imposter syndrome in medical school, know that you aren't alone. I feel it, everyone feels it, but also trust that you will be able to do what you need to do. Even if you don't believe in yourself, I believe in you. And for that, you should subscribe and hit the bell because I've got so much good content coming.